In an era where there is such a massive amount of anime that comes out every quarter of the year, it can be difficult for certain series to get the recognition I feel it deserves. Personal enjoyment is already subjective. I know that everyone is not going to like the shows I like and vice versa, and it certainly isn't going to get any better when airing alongside well-established series, especially ones from the shonen sphere. From the winter season, JJK obviously had the most eyes on it, and going down the list, the brand new Fate anime since the likes of Grand Order, bit of Jigoku Raku in there, etc, etc. Enjoyed everything I did, but among all that I watched, this was one of the few seasons where I felt the action didn't dominate for me. I know, it probably sounds like I'm trying to be different, especially after the three-way domain expansion, but in my defense, I don't make watch list videos to only watch and gas up shonen. As far as this recent winter season goes, with no disrespect to anything else that aired, I really have to give my flowers to You and I Are Polar Opposites and Ikoku Nikki, or an English journal with which. Given the stark contrast between the narratives of the series, it almost feels like a Barbenheimer setup to mention the two side by side. But unlike the films, there is one thing the shows have in common, and it's how their narratives both are driven with emotional navigation and self-discovery. There is an infinite amount of situations in life that will cause you to chart through new waters, and while Polar Opposites uses romance as its vehicle, Ikoku Nikki touches on, well, a lot of real thoughts and feelings to the point where many of us could probably relate. It's hard to not be emotionally invested in either story, and with starting on the warmer side of things, I cannot imagine how great life must be for Kocha Agasawa right now. Two adaptations going back to back, and for our first impressions, Polar Opposites was very great, particularly with how it shows the joy of connecting in a brand new relationship even if you are drastically different people, and what it means to pursue that joy beyond self-conscious concerns. You know, I tend to observe a lot how people in the gaming and anime space talk about their ideal partners, and while I certainly understand why people have checklists given compatibility can be greatly influenced by hobbies and interests, Tani and Suzuki casually defy what would seem as the incompatible couple. Suzuki is more outgoing, loud, and quite fashionable, while Tani is more quiet, reserved, and routinely. But the focus in their relationship isn't exactly on the things that make them different, but rather how their differences bring them together. One of the best parts about liking someone is that sense of discovery. The likes and dislikes, wants and haves, fears and doubts. Those experiences that you share with that special person end up not only reinforcing those initial feelings, which continues to add on to Suzuki and Tani's relationship growth, but it also can help people reflect on who they are and where they come up short personality-wise. I gotta admit that what surprised me the most about this show's run was just how much I really enjoyed the sidecast. I'd go as far as to say that they have a good bit more chemistry in comparison to something like the Fragrant Flower crew in a way that just feels a lot more natural and quite transparent. I like to believe that when an author is writing a romance story and such personal interactions within, it tends to reflect a lot of not only their real life experiences, but also those of their peers. Polar Opposites gets it just right with the rest of the cast for the way it walks a transparent line looking at Yamada and Nishi as well as Azuma and Taira. Opposites Attract is written with so much charm while simultaneously tackling a lot of things like self-consciousness, overthinking, judgment, and false beliefs that we tend to get exposed to the most during the years of our youth. Simply put, a lot of things that don't really matter. Nishi, being the big overthinker, would naturally fall for somebody who doesn't judge her by those insecurities, and it's ironic given Yamada fell for her first and that brother was gunning for it. Hell, I felt the level of yearn through the screen, and just like our main couple, they're another type of proof that people will simply like you as you come entirely. Those quirks or traits that would make you self-conscious may not even come across as something to dote on, and sure enough, being in a non-judgmental atmosphere will positively impact Nishi down the line. I like to imagine that she will come to the realization that it just simply isn't that deep and best to just live. Yamada, being aloof as he is, gives room to curate that mindset, knowing she won't have to walk on eggshells or fit a certain type of vibe, and in return, their relationship comes together very smoothly in this regard. And although Nishi is a more wholesome and harmless case, Taira and Azuma have a lot more work to do. Inwards and outwards reflection is how we come to learn about the mindset of these characters and how they react to external circumstances. They're both focused on their surroundings, their experiences with other people, and notably their roles. Taira is one that focuses on the social structure or hierarchy within the group, while Azuma focuses on the pros and cons of a situation situation and opts to make the best of something even if it means disrespecting herself, all while simultaneously allowing negative superstitions from previous relationships to taint her view on romance. It prevents them from being fully authentic, almost like a wall is put up to stop themselves from really letting loose, and you catch it from time to time, especially with Tyra. And slowly but surely, you can see the walls being broken down among them because of our polar opposite couples. Azuma has some pretty real moments in the show, as I always think about how we certainly live in a society. I remember the episode of her talking to Suzuki about purity, and funny enough, that ended up as Twitter discourse. The think pieces came flying, but that in itself is a point to discuss. Society is hell-bent on making things like purity, people's past relationships, and body count an important metric. And while I understand that everyone has different values and things they will take into consideration, it's ridiculous that these metrics can stop people from just, I don't know, being normal and treating one another as people. We judge the way we all live so intensely, but at the end of the day, regardless of the romantic choices we make, we all live day by day in the present with our own histories that will never be erased. When there is value added on top of worth, it can lead to harmful thoughts, and when Azuma has constantly been disrespected and mistreated regardless of her efforts, you get to see why her current environment of friends is a joy to watch interact. They treat her as she deserves to be treated, hopefully which Tyra will lock in and give her, because again, you can feel the yearn through the screen. They have the type of chemistry that a certain developing fragrant flower couple has, and I honestly am not sure how the author will ultimately get them together, because they definitely are headed in that direction, but I hope that it comes down to Tyra taking the leap of faith, similar to how Suzuki did in episode 1 and just climbed that wall of hesitation, serving as a good parallel too. You take all of this and include a banger opening with one of the most creative visuals so far this year, a really fun adaptation from the facial expressions to the voice acting, and yeah, it's peak. So peak that it immediately got confirmed for a season 2 recently to come right on back in the summer. Once again, this is author Kocha Agasawa's year, and I'm glad that as much as they are getting their flowers, they haven't been alone in receiving them. Journal with Which was a very emotionally loaded story, so much so that I initially was hesitant to approach this video because this would certainly be out of the usual comfort zone, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was a piece of fiction I needed to talk about. Grief can be described as many things: confusing, messy, lonely, and above all, it's a journey. When navigating through it, it can be difficult to point someone in the right direction in terms of feeling, simply because what exactly is right? And that's what I love about Makio and Asa's situation. I know that people say that life is short and that sometimes it may be better to forgive and forget than to hold on to past grievances, but that is not a law people need to live by. Everyone has the right to pick and choose the relationship they may have with someone, even in death, because the way you lived is ultimately how you will be remembered. Asa naturally would love her mother, but for Makio, getting along with her sister was a different story. Their relationship was broken, and more than anything, I understand what it's like for somebody who is creative, who deviates from the so-called norm, or doesn't go along with societal expectations, to be constantly judged, and it only stings even more when it comes from your own family. You just simply want to escape, and nobody could blame Makio for not looking back once she did. It ends up becoming an emotional wound that she may not ever heal from, and when coming to understand the traumatic memories she had, I wouldn't dare urge her to forgive that. Makio is a really interesting character, as while she accepted her niece during a time where her parents have passed on, she didn't exactly forget all the things her sister put her through. She would not allow grief to be the excuse to just suddenly forget and embrace. Sure, this new role of hers as a guardian would certainly come with a lot of quirks given her not so organized lifestyle as an author, but what I respect the most is just how much she valued Asa's individuality. Slowly but surely, Makio's presence and outlook on life rubbed off on Asa, and during a time of such vulnerability, it would mold her into someone that would gradually find their footing in the world again. Though of course, it wasn't easy. Asa struggled almost all season with this grief, and then leading into becoming her own person. But I appreciate that, as there is never a time frame for when somebody begins to move past pain, nor is the process perfect. Some people never do really, and in such a crucial time of her youth, you come to empathize with such an array of raw emotions on display, as she's just trying to find answers to her frustration, her sadness, and understand her loneliness, but Makio wouldn't exactly give them to her, which is a good thing. As blunt as she can be, she could probably come up with the answers that Asa would have wanted to hear, but that would impede upon grounds she knew she had no business treading upon. One thought she always kept in mind is that she is Asa's aunt, not her mother. Rather than trying to fill that position, Makio settled on having conversations with Asa on various topics that would slowly help Asa decide for herself how she would want to proceed as she processed and applied. Simply giving input or explaining her own thoughts would do wonders, and you know, it reminds me that sometimes all people need to do is just talk and not be judged. When we communicate about our experiences or how we feel, we find ourselves being able to recognize when others are going through it or when you may be about to step into something similar yourself. For Asa, who was working towards becoming the person who she wanted to be beyond the pit of grief, that's a very good message for the story to tell, especially in such a terrible era for the world right now where a lot of people my age are confused and don't really know what to do. The journal being a place where Asa could express herself is the icing on the cake, and the visuals of being in a foreign land to symbolize that soul experience or feeling one goes through was a great inclusion across various showcases. One thing I always like to say when talking to a friend in a tough time in their life is that it's okay to not have the answers right now. If you have something on your mind, if you have something to say, even if it doesn't exactly lead to a coherent thought, just let it out. You can't always expect someone to navigate things logically, as the emotions tend to lead first. You might do silly things or have bad days, but one day the sun will shine on you again, and that's what makes healing such a beautiful thing. Even Makio towards the end of the season was not necessarily reflecting as much on all those bad memories she had with her sister growing up. We saw her living in the present a lot more than reflecting on the past. There's so much heart with these two characters, but just like polar opposites, the side casts of the show are not left in the dust either. I know I spent majority of this section talking about the grief aspect, but me describing the series as emotionally loaded comes from various different experiences being depicted, of which requires a lot of reflection and recognition of the things these characters either went through or go through, and there is something you can walk away with from each of these smaller stories within the narrative. And honestly, they all hold some level of truth to them. Take Makio's friend group for example, and how a lot of them are happier in their lives without getting married and going along with what society may expect of them, in comparison to how Asa's mother deep down was crushed by that pressure given the circle she was in. It's okay to live for yourself. You don't have to have a family to feel fulfilled in life. How about Emery and the fact that she really wasn't interested in dating men despite being in an environment where she was constantly asked about such? Perhaps a case of being closeted due to the constant talk of dating a guy, and how Makio's few interactions with her was the type of presence she needed in her life. Kasamichi's dialogue about male-centric rituals in episode 12 was a really big one given how much truth there is in it. For my fellas out there, we all know what it's like to hear or be around conversations that reflect standing, talking about women or certain standings in a clique that warp a lot of people's mindsets about what is really important. We focus on a lot of stupid stuff in our youth because, well, we were a bit dumb back then. It seems like it's the expected course of life to go through, but as you get older and come into your own, you find yourself reflecting and thinking to yourself on just how stupid a lot of that stuff is. There is a bigger picture in life than trying to stand on a bandwagon you can't control. That on top of the harmful instances of toxic masculinity attacking the most common emotions, and I think you can really understand at this point just how much effort this series puts in to tackle so many different experiences in life that people learn to heal from. Society's expectations puts us in a box, and our upbringing can either make us fit or help us break away from them. When all is said and done, the most important thing to do in life is to simply live for yourself. Regardless of your quirks, pain, differences, or struggles, you are the only person that will ever be able to decide how you ultimately want to live, even through life-changing experiences like death. It's such an important thing to remind yourself, as it's easy to get caught up in the inertia of life. Admittedly, I have not watched or read a lot of josei, but it's because I know there is so much to experience in this medium that I keep my palette open and try new things like this. These two shows were truly great experiences, memorable ones even, that I hope piqued you all's interest to give a shot if you haven't checked these out. There's already enough to watch, I know, given we're deep in the spring season lineup now, but as there's an audience for everything, either of these shows may just be exactly what you need, because if there is one thing anime never fails to do, it's deliver us a story in a part of our lives when we needed it the most. With that, ladies and gentlemen, will bring me to the end of this video. As always, thanks for watching, and make sure to let me know all your thoughts about either of these series in the comments section down below. Till then, be well out there, until we meet again in the next one.